This is Freethought Forum, a program by Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Naturalist Nathan.
And I'm Joe Barnhart.
And I'm Riv.
Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Riv. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs.
Okay, and today we want to talk about where does ethics come from? How does it get started? The humanistic basis for ethics is over against it's a naturalistic view rather than a supernatural view.
And before we begin, we want to tell viewers about our sponsors, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Yeah. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. The next meetup is Tuesdays, 5:30 p.m. at Black Horse Pub and Brewery, 4429 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, in the Western Plaza Shopping Center. And for details, go to knoxvilleatheists.org. When you get to the meetup, look for a silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table, or just a bunch of people talking about sciencey stuff or whatever. And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drinks, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Please don't. Okay, the Rationalists of East Tennessee, we have several regular meetings. And you can see the website, rationalists.org. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures and roundtable discussion. And the second Sunday, the Skeptics Book Club. And the fourth Sunday, they mix it up. Sometimes a potluck, and members come together for reflection and discussion.
And later in the show, we'll give you your website and for additional details, times and locations, and so on. And now, do we have the news?
There was a little bit of news. I guess they had a pride parade.
Yes.
Rational atheists and a variety of secular folks were involved marching in it and selling shirts. And I think that was a pretty big deal. There were a lot of people that came out, support LGBT community, all kinds of things that are not supported in a typical Bible if you take it literally, right? So,
yeah, that was one of the interesting things, I think, is you're walking by, and on the show we talk about sometimes, how you can be a humanist and still hold to what you think your religion is and what it says. And, it's those core precepts that guide your actions and your being, rather than, what you do rather than what you say. And so I'm going around all these tents, and they have all these things about, my religion does not discriminate. And and I'm trying to look at it from a view, okay, they're trying to be good people, and they're just kind of compartmentalizing things. And I think should be emphasized in what people do rather than just what they say. And the words can lead to actions, of course, but
Sure.
One of the things that jumped out, and
see what's implied in action. Yeah. So let's make clear now what our topic is. Where do morals come from? How do they get started?
yeah, and part of this is in response to a question we got from a caller last week.
Good question.
Yeah, and he was kind enough to send us an email, if I could find it. I guess I could read his email response. Let's see.
Give us a summary if you can.
Oh, I could give you a summary. So here's the whole email. It was from me, and he says, I hope I can phrase my question in a way that you can understand them. I remember that I tackled two different issues. Logic and reason are sufficient enough to motivate people to help each other because understanding the argument from fairness helps people realize that caring about other people benefits them as well. However, there are situations where helping people only benefits the receivers, while the good doer may suffer some harm. There's no benefit for the doer, with the exception of a sense of fulfillment. Usually, if a person does it, he would say, because it is the right thing to do. And then the point of fairness seems to be to fail to inspire him to help the other person. And this is where faith comes in to rescue. he says, right? So that's what he asked before the episode ended.
Well, that's a good point of departure.
And then there was another question. I guess I could also add, addressing the target difference between humanistic morals and biblical morals. And he goes on to say that the humanistic morals concern about the recipient's well-being, and the biblical morals are all about what's in line with Yahweh's law, whatever that is. Which I think a lot of Christians tend to see it that way, as there's some Yahweh's law that's more better than whatever we can come up with.
But we could ask the question, if there were a Yahweh and he gave moral laws, where'd they come from? Did you just lean back and say, I think I'll just invent them? But on what basis and what grounds?
And
so you still have to have a rational basis for it.
Right, and I think, and I saw an argument the other day that I don't remember the name of it, but it was, where did God get his ethical laws? So
exactly. How did ethics come into being?
I mean, so
okay, let's get to that right away. How does ethics get started? And I'm going to emphasize, here we have human beings, and they want pleasure, and they want to avoid pain. That's basic. But you live in a world which gives you both. And part of this world is other people we live with. Now, you can be a solipsist. That means you and you alone live in the world.
Right.
That could be an incredibly boring and therefore painful life.
And you have an amazing imagination, too.
Yeah, but what are you going to imagine?
I'm not going to go along with the solipsis. Where I'm the only person, I'm just imagining.
So and the old question is, why would we help someone else? That's a good question. One reason is we want other people to help us, and if we're smart, we learn to get pleasure in helping other people by identifying with other people. Any mother understands that.
The mother should. So we have a caller that might be able to
that's good.
clarify or add to it. Let me answer.
Go ahead,
Hello?
caller.
Can we get your name? Well, hi.
Take a moment.
Little louder.
Here it goes.
I think we can hear you now.
Yeah. Hello, Charles.
Hi, Charles.
Hi.
What do you think about morals without God?
Well, one of the interesting things I've noticed is that, at least in the United States, when they ask people that question, how can you have morals without God? They always mean the same one God. Yet when you encounter people, let's say, destroying Aborigines, you meet people who have spent thousands and thousands of years without contact with any other groups and have absolutely no reference point for the Abrahamic God, what they mean in the United States, and yet they have morals.
Right. From point of anthropology, you go back and you'll have kind of this primordial manna kind of worshiping and totems and so on, manifestations of nature. And even then, I don't think people were, having this kind of society where everyone's just constantly killing everyone. I mean, you had to survive, and treating each other well, and some basic system of trust seems necessary for that.
As a matter of fact, even if you hold that there is a God, you still have to ask the question, is he good or not? Or she good or not? And then, what makes it good? And then you get back to the pleasure and the pain. Rock bottom pleasure and pain. Suppose someone said to you, you can go to heaven and have everything you want except no pleasure and no happiness. Thanks for nothing. So what we're saying is the desire for pleasure and enjoyment and avoidance of pain is how ethics gets started. And we live in a real world of gravity and other people, and so we have to make rules and regulations in connection with that.
One of the points pointed out, I believe his name was Ephesus' dilemma was, is it good because God says so? Or is God good because he says so?
You throw.
Something to that effect.
Well, obviously, if it's not good and God said it, so the point is, if you're going to use the word good, God, you've got to say, well, is he good or not? And I would argue the traditional view is he's supposed to be good. If he does certain things that don't seem to be good, then see, I would argue most evangelicals have so much evil in their view of God that he wouldn't count as a God.
That's a really good point, because I spoke with my friends and other people in the past, and they seem to center on this notion that, well, it's not that I agree with it, it's just what the book says. And that seems to be recurrent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that becomes their definition of good, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, even not that it's good, it's just that they're so fearful of the consequences if they don't follow what the book says, and
Yeah.
you know.
Even if you're going to have a debate, you have to have an ethical principle of understanding the other person's view and not twisting it to mean something that he didn't say. And that means we have to listen carefully. And that's just the principle of justice and fairness. In fact, if you're going to drive a car, you have to have rules and regulations. Go ahead.
That brings up one of the things I keep wanting to point out to evangelicals, is that many of the things that are declared just, right, and true in the Bible are directly against the laws of the Republic of the United States. For instance, Christ specifically stated, no, the law shall not be changed and by word, thought, or tittle until the heaven and the earth passes away. And yet the Hebrew law allows fathers to sell their daughters. So I'd like to know where in the Republic of the United States is it legal for men to sell their daughters? Since God is, well, all good, is that a good thing?
Well, you could look at parts of the Bible and see this is not a good thing at all.
yeah, I think the Bible is pretty un-American, to be honest. So we have secular ethics, and they're based on, I guess they go way back to Greek and Roman rules, right?
Yeah, I would even argue there's really some secular ethics in the Bible. The reason is they could not have ethics in the Bible without it.
Well,
Ethics.
the society that created love,
Go ahead.
oh, the First Testament and the Second Testament would have destroyed themselves without them. They wouldn't have been created at all. We have to get along together. So
Exactly.
certain things like, no, you don't get to smack my little wife around and make her have sex with you, or I will kill you, and things of this nature. So,
Would you agree that many of the Ten Commandments were not given on Mount Sinai, existed long before Mount Sinai, and had to,
Yeah.
otherwise you wouldn't have had a community in Egypt?
Right.
you wouldn't have a community that made it to Egypt,
Exactly.
okay? You will find many of the same concepts and ideas in the Code of Hammurabi, I think it's pronounced. The same elements of the Ten Commandments, and that was written, at least 15 centuries before the Ten Commandments were. So there are.
Yeah, the stories of Abraham and Isaac and there, that's before Moses came on the scene with the Ten Commandments. So what we're dealing with here is, how does ethics get started? Where does it come from? And let me
Things I want to point out is what they've discovered in studies with animals. Social group animals, such as the meerkats, share food and water supplies among themselves. And where they found one that was dying out in the wild, in nature. They refused to leave their severely injured and dying meerkat until after it's dead, even though it's hot, it's sticky, it's dangerous because there are predators running around. And in the cages and so forth, in laboratory settings, animals will often, social group animals, will share food and water with one another.
And they're also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of the animals do cooperate, don't they? And it's kind of like, I guess, built in instinctively.
And there are those videos as well.
Social species animals.
Oh.
Okay? You don't see that kind of cooperation among, say, tigers or bears or sharks. Because, you know, they don't hang around together with one another.
Would you say that Homo sapiens are a social species?
Definitely.
Definitely.
I don't see us,
Well, we try to be.
after we hit the quota of adulthood, us splitting off and never, you know, talking to one another, even unless we're fighting over a territory. And in singles, we work together in groups. That is one of almost the basic definition of a social species.
I'd say that the some of the most successful groups of humans are fairly social, probably. That's right. Right? So there may be groups that aren't social.
Explain why they're successful.
Why they're successful? Well, I mean, if you cooperate, and you have a variety of different people, and they do a variety of different things. Like some might have a preference for social skills and a preference for mechanical skills and preferences, because life works on variety. And you cooperate, you could trade these skills.
That's like having many fingers. They cooperate.
And have a greater whole than just the sum of the parts, right? So
that makes sense.
So we see that in what is that? That's like capitalism, right? Where you can buy and trade and sell and.
Well, I would say more accurately the market of variable ideas. I mean, you know, things that are effective and things that are not effective. You have crony capitalism. It's not the same thing, but
no.
But it reminded me of music. Collaboration, art collaboration. You get a bunch of people together to draw a mosaic. It's going to be different than it was just the one person, and it, you know, you'll have more ideas coming together, and it applies to everything like that. Whereas if you're just isolated, and you know, try to go it alone in life and do, you know, not really exercising empathy in that way, it's arguably going to be less fulfilling life and less effective life.
I would argue we get more pleasure in being involved with others. So sometimes you get pain too, but overall I think you get more pleasure by working with people and sharing. And well, for one thing, if you do a work of art, you like to have other people to appreciate it.
Right, get those oxytocins going. And
I'm working on a novel, and I need people to criticize what I'm doing so I can make it better. Because a lot of times I so fall in love with how good my stuff is, and I need someone to say, Ed, have you seen this, Joe? It looks kind of inconsistent. And that's helpful.
Okay, before I go, I'd like to point out that it appears that we're going to have a lunar eclipse in approximately 1 month.
1 month from now.
Nice.
And it's going to be a blood moon, unquote. The biggest, longest, in over a century. So that will last approximately an hour, and you'll be able to see it, because it's going to cross, we won't be able to see it, but most of it's going to be crossing Africa and parts of Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And the end of the world groupies are already howling about the sign of the end times, just like the last set of we had. So Some
Wow.
things never seem to change.
Some people just believe what they want to believe, I think, and I wonder if these folks are really just kind of suicidal, or maybe part of kind of a death cult, and they are looking forward to the end of the world. Is that a possibility? I wonder.
More like we've got our special super duper super secret knowledge, and that makes us better than anybody else. Because it's kind of like an oxytocin high when they start getting hysterical over something that has happened hundreds of thousands of times in the history of our species, and will happen, hundreds of thousands of times more. And when you point out, well, hey, just like you mean like the last 300 or 400 times since the days of Christ.
What happened in 2012? What happened? So,
Okay, now.
They're always so hopeful, though. I mean, and they never give up. That's kind of a positive trait, right? It's like, we'll try this time for real. It'll end. This is the end for sure. We know it.
Okay, let me ask a question on our topic now.
Oh,
If reason and ethics, does it take more than reason to have ethics?
yeah. So goodbye, Charles. I think
Thank
we
you,
need
Charles.
to go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
well, I would say with kind of reason and ethics, I think one springs from the other, but I think it's possible also to have a core reception of this cause, this effect, to kind of imply that, or impose that, I guess, in the community.
Well, what I was wanting to emphasize, if you had just reason without pleasure and enjoyment, you wouldn't have ethics. It wouldn't be worth anything. I mean, you got human beings with no pleasure, no joy, no happiness. Thanks for nothing.
Well, I guess.
And ethics is a way of trying to increase our happiness and trying to reduce our pain. Sometimes we go through pain because we know that certain kinds of pain are necessary to get more pleasure.
Right.
Like playing football sometimes.
Right. Or when you're young, getting maybe and coming into more contact with more bacteria and so on. The body becomes resilient as you get older, and so on and so on.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I was going to say real quick, Nathan, you're going to say something maybe. This something comes up from Ming was talking on the line the other day, and this was actually replied to in a response. And it comes from a Scott Clifton YouTube video 8 years ago or so. And it's about a half an hour long, but I quote this first part about 3 minutes in. And he defines morality, and has at least how he would put it. And he said, a particular action or choice is moral or right when it somehow promotes happiness, well-being, or health, or it somehow minimizes unnecessary harm or suffering, or it does both. A particular action or choice is immoral or wrong when it somehow diminishes happiness, well-being, or health, or somehow causes unnecessary harm or suffering, or again does both.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good.
seems pretty succinct.
That's sensible, isn't it?
No. But some people might argue and say, but God does that. And then so where do you go from that point?
Well, I would argue the evangelical God has, if you use pleasure and the pain thing, the evangelical God hadn't pulled off too much. I mean, he's got a notion of hell, which is worse than Stalin and Hitler put together.
Some genocides,
Yeah, in fact, this view is so evil that it makes Hitler and Stalin look angelic by comparison. And therefore, I would say basically these particular kind of atheists, theists are more atheists like Stalin and Hitler in that respect. Now, of course, they're inconsistent, fortunately, in that they have become good people in other areas. And I want to emphasize that there are many evangelical Christians who have bad theology. In fact, it's wicked theology, but their behavior is much superior to their theology. Yeah. In that sense, they can be good people despite their theology.
Right, not because of it.
Yeah, and I had an aunt who was an evangelical Christian, but I have never met a better human being. I used to tease her about that, but she was
in spite of her belief, in spite of her her foundation.
I'd point out she understood what I was saying. That some of your religion is just downright immoral. And gradually we got to understand it. That's why I enjoyed her so much. Is she had her views, but she could interact with other people, and that's why people enjoyed being around her.
So you say she was reasonable then?
Oh, very reasonable.
And didn't actually need to depend on some external source maybe for.
Well, most of us.
Her morals maybe.
Are find out there are certain aspects of our lives we're not totally consistent, and I think that was just one case with her. And if she had pressed real hard, she could have found me inconsistent in certain areas. That would have been helpful. And I always remember what a good human being she was.
So I like. Sometimes you meet really good people, and they just, even though the Bible says you should, kill blasphemers, she's like, no, I don't really think we should do that. Yeah. Or, stone belligerent children.
Yeah, most Christians don't take that seriously at all.
This just stick to the love your neighbor, like yourself kind of thing, and love, and the golden rule kind of stuff, right?
People pick and choose from the Bible. They use their brains. And then some preachers say it's the whole Bible, but look what they do, and you realize they don't.
So let me point out that this is a live show, and you can call in at 865-215-2288 if you'd like to talk about where our morals come around without God. So you said a couple of things about what is ethical or moral, and it's if it increases happiness and well-being, and I guess there are quite a few philosophies on how that might apply in real life, though, right? Because some people might extend it to just themselves, and then some people might say, well, me and people I like, and people, my family, and maybe my town. You can get bigger and ever-expanding circles, right, on increasing happiness and wellness. And I guess what is the ultimate? Is it utilitarians?
Yes.
That say, well, if we're going to increase utility, like on the whole planet, if you could measure wellness and subtract
pain and
agony and suffering, and take this one number that is goodness, right? And you want to increase the whole thing. Is that utilitarianism? Is that right? Or is that the wrong word?
No, I think you're right. It's in a way, it's trying to define what goodness is, and it's contributing to your happiness and the happiness of others. Now, we do say, well, that works well, using the word good in an automobile, because the parts work all the way. But when we're talking about ethics and using the word good, we understand what we're talking about, I think. I mean, food tastes good, but now you can eat some food and they give you diarrhea, so that's not good.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to, that's where reason comes in.
And you can measure it. You can measure it subjectively and just say it feels right, and then you can also try to measure it in other terms, more scientifically. Right?
Other contexts,
yeah.
Well, also I think it's useful to take into account utilitarian itself, right? There's act utilitarianism, there's a rule utilitarianism. And so you have these different emphasis on outcome-driven or kind of protocol-driven, and they have different implications.
Yeah, the rule utilitarians are making a good point. I mean, the act utilitarian, they're probably right, but the rule utilitarian says we can't know everything.
Right.
So let's summarize some of what we've learned and make those guidelines or rules until they break down. And I think all families learn this to get along.
Right. It's taken, because you take bits of both with different aspects of it.
That's a good way to put it.
And you think, okay, well, we need this system to cover for, we can't know everything, so we should have something that at least covers everything in a general sense. However, some circumstances, when you do know more context, when you do know more details, we shouldn't just do it just because that's what the guideline says. So and that's always changing.
Yeah,
right?
New circumstances, yeah.
Right, new variables, new evidence, new action.
Well, you're driving a car. Usually, you drive stay on the right-hand lane. If something appears on the right hand, like a cow, you get over.
Right. There's reactions to it as well, and something that came to mind just now. And again, going back to Ming, because he called in, and this is something I think he either asked verbally or wrote on the online messenger, or the Facebook was. Why, if something is good, even if there's no gain to the self? And it was mentioned earlier, but I just want to emphasize that I think also, just ask the question, say you're walking along and there's something small you can do or whatever, and you can walk by, you can help, whatever the scenario might be. Now, as to the motivation that you would do that, is it because I'm willfully choosing to lose this part of myself that will not benefit me, it will asymmetrically help them, and I'm okay with that, or walking along, or is it this incites a feeling of pain inside me when I think about how it might feel to be in that person's situation?
I think both of them.
Yeah.
And furthermore, most of us learn if you help someone in need, it gives us pleasure to see their increase in pleasure. You get identity with other people.
Right, and I think that's one of the key emphasis is, the question was, how can you do that without God or some kind of divine source arbitrating what is not oughtness? And I would say, you don't need any of that. You just observe the circumstances in front of you and say, this will help them. This will also make me feel better about myself that I've helped them, and
make a better orderly society to live in.
Yeah, it just multiplies and becomes better, I think. So maybe if that answers the question, I'm not sure if maybe that doesn't answer or not. That was specifically asked.
So would like a good rule be? I mean, I like this rule of thumb kind of things, like saying like paying it forward. If you pay it forward, that might be an example of what Ming says. People might do something selflessly that might even hurt them. Why would they do that if they don't have a God that says you should be selfless, right? I think though, on the whole, in the long term, if you live in a society where people are a little bit selfless, it kind of comes back to you, right? It's like what goes around comes around, or
even being selfless, as we call it, can be to our self-interest. You got selfless, selfish, and self-interest. And selfishness is not to our self-interest.
Right.
Right.
I mean, for example, I'm in a hurry to get somewhere. I'm driving along, and I have to slow down. I don't like that, but I like living longer.
Right. Yeah. It might be easier to just basically go along the side road and just go 100, but that wouldn't end too well.
I had an uncle once when I was learning to drive. He said, "Joe, you're driving fast. You're trying to get to heaven?" I saw his point.
Some of those folks with the little fish logo on the back, I think maybe are trying to get to heaven first, right? I don't know what it is about their driving, but somebody else is taking the wheel, somebody imaginary.
Yeah, my uncle said, he teased me, he said, "You really won't get to heaven, you'll get over to Newport." That's where they had a mortician.
Oh, that's very practical.
I had an uncle like that who had a lot of sense of humor, but he was very practical.
There you go. Down to earth, right?
Down to earth.
Interesting.
Or you just station outside of Eglin, of course, because then if you go to the mall in Florida, people will cut you off with, a couple of inches or so when you get near the mall, and so they might have their own agenda, but... Okay.
So we've talked a little about varieties of ways that we can say that this is fair, I guess, or ethical or good. But I think a lot of it may not satisfy the Christian viewers who say, well, all that's just subjective terms you're using. Like, because we say it's good or it's pleasurable or all these things are still subjective because they're like kind of a personal opinion.
It's both subjective and objective.
Objective? Well, sometimes it is.
Sure.
Right.
In other words, it's an objective fact that if you do certain things, you can get wiped out, you can get your legs broken. All those are objective facts.
Yeah, you can see, a whole town or society where everybody cheats and everybody lies and everybody doesn't follow the road rules. You end up with, more failures because
you don't have much of a town you want to live in. You want to get out.
Business deals fall through, and everybody's cars are broken, and all these kinds of things.
Well, that's a good point. If everybody is so deceitful, you go in to get your car repaired, you come off worse than you went in.
Yeah. Everybody's like, why is my insurance rate so high? What? Yeah. Why are there car parts all over the road?
Well, ethics
if you don't follow the rules.
Ethics is common sense in the sense of common consensus, that we have to go by certain rules if we're going to live together and have some enjoyment in life. We don't have we don't have an option.
Oh, see, now, when I was a kid, though, none of these arguments still weren't good enough, right? Because I wanted, and I was taught this in a way, like in church, they said, you need an absolute moral guide. And that's got to be God from the Bible because, what else is perfect, right? That's what they say. So I always wanted that. And one of the reasons I clung to religion was because I thought I needed that. So,
even if you think there's a God, you still got to ask, is he good or not? And you got to have standards to determine. For example, I argue that the evangelical God is, I mentioned earlier, is so evil in some respects. It shouldn't be called God. It's taking a name that's, they baptized it, and then when they came up with it, they didn't come up with much.
Oh, but they use that. See, that's how they define it, though. And they say...
It's a good way to put it.
God works mysteriously, though, all right? So they try to find silver linings.
Yeah, when you can't give a good argument, come up with a mysterious argument.
And it gives you... But it does give you this sense of... all is right with the world, even though it's awful, because there's some plan, right?
Right. It's kind of like a placebo, I guess, maybe, of this brings me peace, therefore. And I have friends, I have family, of course. I think we all do have friends and family who that seems to be adequate. And I think some of it's just a difference of what they bother to look into,
I had an aunt and uncle who had very good friends with all of these evangelical preachers around in their neighborhood and towns. But I noticed the way my aunt and uncle operated was good common sense and neighborliness. And in other words, they heard all of these preachers, but they're doing pretty much what their parents had already taught them. Because I knew the mother of one of these, and she was a very kind person.
Well,
so what I'm saying is theology itself did not drop in from heaven. It was invented.
By mothers and parents and maybe grandparents.
Yeah, human beings projecting.
Okay, we're going to have to do a sponsor identification.
Okay.
If you want. So in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
And we have moved. This is our new regular time every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30 here in Eastern Tennessee, Knoxville Community Access Television, channels 6, 12, 99, and 193, depending on your local cable network. So please tell your friends to stream online, and it's be ctvknox.org.
And today's show is live. It's the 27th of June, and you can call the number on the screen and speak with us. While we take a short break, please watch these informative videos about our sponsors. or we'll get there. Don't worry about
If
it.
you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else,
How many
well,
siblings you got?
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
All right. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets one or more times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. Find us online at knoxvilleatheist.org. The purpose of ASK is to support a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Next Tuesday meeting is at 5:30 p.m. At Black Horse Pub and Brewery, 4429 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, in the Western Plaza Shopping Center.
Right. From the Rationalists of East Tennessee website, upcoming events are an Adopt a Highway pickup the Saturday before the Skeptics Book Club on Sunday.
And let's see, last...
We really just need to check the website.
Oh, yeah.
For,
because it changes
yeah.
the events.
Rationalist.org, www.rationalist.org.
Okay.
For program or meeting time or locations.
We're this is Ask Atheist Society of Knoxville, and there's the Knoxville Pride Parade on Saturday. What?
We had it.
Yeah,
That's right. We got some of this is yesterday, last week.
I thought it just looked a little
So
antiquated. Okay, let's get back to the program.
Back to how do you make your morals without God, which is a very common theme, I think. And basically, the root of the problem is what is better, the God's way or not God's way? And what I learned is that it's not God's way is the better, because there's just really too many awful things about the Bible and the Abrahamic religions. I mean, look at the Middle East. I mean, they're still fighting. They've been fighting forever.
Well, the fact is, when people read the Bible, they're in a community, and where people have different views and so forth. And when they read the Bible, they have a selective way of reading it. Mm-hmm. They don't just focus on one thing only. They have to pick and choose, and that's reasoning, saying, yeah, okay, yeah, we're not going to drown everybody the way they did in the days of Noah. And you could have I've had very good Christian neighbors who understood that they had to read the Bible with some good common sense. And they would say, well, now this is the Bible, but they were selecting their parts of the Bible to emphasize. And yes. I can live with people like that.
So don't take every word literally.
Of course not.
Yeah, it's a lot of parables. I like the parables, and those are obviously stories.
Yeah, some of them are very
real.
useful.
Yeah.
You know,
and also you got this system, right, of how I seem to think of it, and I talk to people about it sometimes at the Pride Parade, as well as talking with people who came by. One person came by, and we talked about the Bible for a bit. Very pleasant fellow. He was a Christian, and but he was out there, and he had this big shirt. It said something about fun Bible times or something. It was this kind of comical shirt, and that started a conversation. And we came to a point where we were basically agreeing. I think
that's a good point. You find common beliefs sometimes in me.
Right. I mean, the emphasis there was epistemology and ethics. Those are my two things I care about, I say most within the field of philosophy.
Yeah.
But I hold ethics higher.
Ethics and the theory of knowledge, yeah.
Right. And so I think it's important, you should pursue knowledge, you should be honest with yourself. But at the end of the day, I think it's how you treat people and what ends you're going towards matters more, I think. And people of all kinds of beliefs can come to those.
Well, in this way, we can learn from each other. So you're a Christian and a Jew and a Muslim and a naturalist rather than a supernaturalist. So we can all learn from each other. We can disagree with each other, but why would we assume that just because you have a view, some things I don't agree with, doesn't mean I can't learn from you about other things?
Yeah,
because we all
and
have
I
different
think
walks of life.
Learning, I think, is the key here, though, right? So animals don't necessarily have the learning capacity. Other animals don't have the learning capacity we do, and we're basically, in some ways, almost instinctless, right? We don't have a lot of instinct sometimes, and it depends on the person. Right? Some people have really strong feelings about things.
That's a good point.
Right, and they just are kind of impulsive sometimes.
We remodeled some of our instincts.
Yeah, we can do that, and that's how we're winning the planet, I think. Or destroying, conquering the planet. Yeah, because of our learning capacity, we can change and adapt so much faster than the other animals that are kind of reliant on sort of a
I've
random.
noticed these two dogs living with us. They have learned the sound of my plate when I'm eating. And Lord behold, they come very friendly around.
My dogs learned if I say "oh" in the kitchen, they think he must have dropped something, and they're right there. So they're here to help.
I have a feline overlord who allows me to stay in the apartment so long as I feed him and water him. And call me cat jokes, and anytime there's a bag rustling or a tin can, he just bolts in there. And I mean, of course, that's common, but sometimes it's not every bag wrinkling. It's a specific kind of squishy bag wrinkling that is built in there and start meow, 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 meow.
Oh, talking to you.
I mean, it's like, well, clearly you have something for me.
So here's a question, though. Do cats have ethics or morals, or are they totally evil?
Well,
no, we're not totally evil then.
Something that came to mind kind of on that thing was, we're talking about how human beings, we're so fragile, right? We require a community and parents, to keep care of us to the point where we can take care of ourselves. So that doesn't happen overnight. It takes years.
Yeah.
And whereas some animals come out, they're already walking. Right?
They walk earlier. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so it seems like, from an evolutionary perspective, we're not adapted to just immediately pop out and start becoming the apex predator. It's the community of humanity that has become the apex predator.
And that's where ethics
has very, very important.
It must come into it. Otherwise, the community wouldn't survive long enough to raise this kid up.
Yeah, if you're going to hold your family together and hold your community together long enough for these kids to get to where they can hunt and do useful things, it takes a while. So,
my dogs have learned that if you come around at a certain time, they get more pleasure in what we're doing. In other words, they begin to feel part of a community. And I have a cat that'll just come and jump in my lap.
It's a nice feeling, I think.
It's a nice feeling for me and the cat.
Yeah.
So this is interesting, though. It must be a combination of learning and their emotions. Like the animals have emotions and feelings. And the things they think, well, this is good or this is bad, right? So
that's a good point.
Some of our pets are the ones that happen to like being petted or hanging around people or just kind of participating in our little families, right?
Yeah.
And I guess humans do too, right? From a baby, when you're born as a child, you don't pick your parents. You don't pick the things that feel good or don't feel good. So for a long time, you're just kind of a lot like an animal.
Well, you discover. I had an animal that would like me to sing, except when I was trying to sing opera.
Oh, yeah?
And trying to go along with when I could hear it on radio and I'd sing along. I realized it was just too loud and bombastic for an animal.
Well, a thought that came to mind also about two things. One, cats. I have an hypothesis that cats tried to take over the world and have not yet given up. Look at the internet, right? And it's an ongoing process. And then but that aside, it's when we treat our animals in such way, right? In different parts around the world, they're treated different ways, right? Different countries, different policies. You go to, for instance, one of my professors in learning Japanese some years ago. They had the comment that it was the most bizarre thing coming to America, and where they have, the public version of Thanksgiving, not the historical. It's depressing. Yeah. But the public version of Thanksgiving, right? She thought it was just bizarre.
We have a caller.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's about Thanksgiving.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Caller.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Give us your name or nickname.
Speak up.
Yeah. This is Phil calling in. I live in Knoxville.
Okay. Hello, Phil.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Enjoying your program.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
This issue of morals. Nathan, I like your description of yourself as a naturalist. I feel like that sometimes that better describes me than some of the other terms that are used for secular people. Assuming that the world can be explained with natural explanations is important to me. I think that the reason I think that this idea of ethics for non-believers is an important one, and one that we need to stick by our guns on. The human being is a social animal, and as such, you got into it a few minutes ago, Joe, when you said that we live in communities and therefore ethics are very necessary. And so we evolved in to be a social animal and to take care of each other as well as ourselves, because that also takes care of ourselves when we take care of other members of our community. And I think that that's an important point to make. And if you start saying that the only way that you can have ethics is from an absolute point of view, and that absolute being God, well, obviously, even in the Judeo-Christian tradition, not everybody has the same set of ethics, and nor the same God. I mean, and certainly Buddhists and other religions certainly don't have the same God, but they're still pretty ethical. I mean, people all over the world in general are pretty ethical, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you look.
I think it's actually hard work to be mean all the time, right?
It's not as much fun.
I mean,
Some books make it look easy.
You're really shooting yourself in the foot if you're mean all the time, and people who are mean all the time sort of get put out on the side by the rest of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think what I believe is probably most people want to do the right thing, right? Even like some of the most awful people in history probably said, well, we think the right thing is, to take over this other country and make them like us.
Well, everyone's the hero of their own story, even dictators.
Yeah. But right, when they get rules like in the Bible and they just stick to it without reasoning about it, I think that's where they really go wrong. That's what I've noticed.
Absolutely, I think that's right. And I think that the reasons that many people do things good, if it's based strictly on doing it to avoid going to hell, then they're in trouble if they reach a point where they really question that and leave. Whenever I'm with the faith, so to speak.
Go ahead.
I used to be a fundamental Christian. Whenever I left the faith, yeah, I was concerned. I was worried that I might just go totally wild, but I didn't. And there were a lot of constraints besides just believing that I was going to go to hell. There were a lot of other constraints that dictated how I behaved toward my fellow human being. And like you say, it feels much better to do something good for somebody if you can do that and survive than it does to do something bad to somebody.
I bet you would agree that even when you're around a cat or a dog, you want to be nice and enjoy the pleasure of a dog and their happiness.
Well, now, Joe, I'm not very much a dog person.
That's okay. That's okay.
But because just for that very reason, you said when you're eating your dinner, I don't really enjoy the dog staring at me.
Well, I'm in agreement with you on that. Well, as a matter of fact,
you want to be nice. You want to be nice to all of the earth. And to all of the other species, in as far as you can do that. And I think that,
so you're saying
that people do want to do that.
When I was losing my religion, I was also worried about what if I do all these things I'm tempted to do, right? Because sometimes, they tell you, oh, you just do awful things. I guess they scare you as a child, right? It feels like brainwashing, really. But
the word itself, its connotations, intended versus unimplied versus.
Yeah, I was also worried about maybe becoming a Nazi. Anyway, they.
I wasn't worried about that particular one. But yeah, there was all kinds of things, and I think that the fear that as Joe says, Christians in many cases are very good people, and in spite of sometimes the things that they're asked to believe, and I think the fear that they instill sometimes in their children is not healthy at all for the not just the parents, but also the official doctrines of their churches.
Oh, yeah.
The fear and guilt that they impose on the young people is, to me, one of the most serious problems in some religions.
I think you would agree. There are so many realistic fears that we have to. For example, don't play in the street.
Right.
You can end up flat on the pavement.
And sciencey stuff like the Earth is older than 6,000 years, and so Phil, do you have a general rule of thumb now that you use for ethics or morals, or like a golden rule or a platinum rule or something?
Well, I think that just it's sort of
running out of time.
It's sort of going on your gut, sort of on how you treat people. Sometimes, sometimes people are too nice to people. Let's say people who don't deserve to be, your kindness that much, and sometimes people are too nice. But I just sort of, I don't have really a rule like that. It's just I sort of go in my gut, and I try to obey the laws. Sometimes I think laws are not, or oppressive laws. The debate is going on now about how to treat children of immigrants who are trying to cross our borders. And some people on one side argue that they have to obey the law, and that's almost like telling black people that they need to obey the laws that existed in the 50s.
Speaking of laws, we can't break the rule of time here. We've got 20 seconds, so thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So much.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Very good show.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So I guess all we can do is say, nuns are those who identify with no religion and are the fastest growing religion.